Welcome to Pen and Perspective, where the story always knows more than it's telling. Every word is intentional, every silence holds a truth. Let's get into it. Terrell doesn't lose. That's simple math. Wins stacked over years, quiet settlements, verdicts that never made the news. His firm doesn't advertise like that because they don't need to. Their reputation moves faster than billboards ever could. Terrell learned early that you have to show up prepared if you want to be powerful. He drives a luxury hybrid, smooth, silent, expensive in a way only people who know cars would notice. He likes nice things, but not loud ones. Wealth to him isn't about proving you have it. It's about making sure it lasts long enough to matter to somebody after you. He dresses the same way, clean lines, neutral colors. Nothing that distracts from the fact that when he walks into a room, people straighten up without realizing why. Most know him as an attorney. The people who really know him know something else. Terrell is loyal, not casually loyal, not I'll check on you when I can, loyal. He is the kind of friend who shows up before you ask and stays after everyone else leaves. The kind who remembers what you said 5 years ago and brings it back up when it really matters. And that's why this one hurt. Walter wasn't just a client. He wasn't even just a friend. He was family. They built that friend group over years, dinners that ran long, arguments that didn't end friendships, milestones celebrated loud and together. They'd watched each other level up without stepping on each other to do it. That kind of loyalty doesn't happen by accident. It happens because everybody protects the circle. So when Walter got arrested, Terrell knew immediately something was wrong. He could feel that shit in his bones. The paperwork moved too fast. The charges landed too clean. The narrative was already formed before anyone had asked the right questions. Even the officer's posture said it, like the outcome had been decided somewhere else and protocol was just catching up. When he asked, "On what grounds?" and got an eye roll instead of an explanation, that was the moment it landed. For the first time in his career, he felt time working against him, and he hated that feeling more than anything else. He didn't stop working, he just shifted. Every other case became background noise. His firm kept winning because that's what they do, but his attention stayed locked on one thing: how a man who rarely ever drank ended up with a blood alcohol narrative that wouldn't stand up under scrutiny, and why everyone involved seemed so comfortable letting it slide. He visited Walter, listened more than he talked, noted what was said and what wasn't. He listened to Sandra when she called at 3 a.m., voice tight, telling him about a call that shouldn't have existed, about a warning that didn't come from nowhere. He filed motions that went nowhere, asked questions that got answers too rehearsed to trust. And somewhere between frustration and resolve, something settled in him. Terrell wasn't just going to win this case, he was going to understand it. Because if the system could move this fast against someone like Walter, then the problem wasn't just one bad arrest, it was the machine. And Terrell had spent his whole life learning how machines break. Update 1. It all moved too fast. Terrell knew something was wrong before he ever made it upstairs. It wasn't panic, it wasn't chaos, it was calm, too much of it. Walter didn't look drunk. He didn't sound confused. He was injured, shaken, pissed off, but not impaired. Terrell had represented men who were guilty as hell, men who slurred, men who over-explained, men who tried to charm their way out of handcuffs. Walter wasn't moving like any of them. What unsettled him wasn't just the arrest, it was the speed. In the days that followed, everything accelerated. The toxicology report came back faster than usual. The initial police narrative hardened too early. A civilian witness statement appeared in the file within 48 hours. Someone who claimed to have seen Walter unsteady near the vehicle at the gas station before the crash. No body cam footage, no hospital staff corroborated it. The witness wasn't present when EMS arrived, but the statement stayed. Hearings were scheduled fast, faster than Terrell liked, faster than his objections could slow them. Language appeared in reports before it normally did. Boilerplate phrasing showed up fully formed like it had been waiting. Weeks. That was all it took, not months. Terrell stood in court watching his friend get sentenced, jaw locked so tight it hurt. This wasn't just a loss. This wasn't a professional setback he could absorb and move past. This was Walter, someone he'd grown with, someone he trusted, someone who had done everything the right way and was now being processed like collateral damage. Terrell had lost cases before. He had never watched one swallow a friend whole. The firm didn't slow down after that. It couldn't. They handled too much to stop. Corporate disputes, regulatory fights, civil cases most firms avoided because they bled time and nuance. And quietly, intentionally, their pro bono docket stayed heavy. Housing cases, wrongful terminations, regulatory retaliation. People who couldn't afford him still deserved representation that didn't cut corners. That mattered to Terrell. It always had. But Walter's case never left the top of the stack. Terrell made a call he didn't announce. By the time Terrell called Harold, Walter had been sentenced long enough for the shock to wear off. That was the part that scared him most. Not the anger, not the disbelief, the quiet. They met in Harold's office after hours. Harold didn't ask why he was there. He already knew. Terrell sat down, loosened his tie, stared at the wall for a second before speaking. "I can't let this go," he said finally. "I mean, I've obviously lost before, so this isn't about that, but because I don't understand it." Harold leaned back in his chair, hands folded over his stomach. He'd been federal once, long enough to know when the story stopped lining up. "You're not wrong," Harold said. "This case never behaved like a regular DUI homicide." Terrell exhaled slowly. Harold turned his screen toward him. "I noticed it early," he continued, "before sentencing, the witness statement, the timing. It landed too clean, like it had a destination before it ever hit the file." Terrell nodded. "That witness doesn't exist anywhere else," Harold finished. "No prior statements, no unrelated interactions, no paper trail, not even a traffic citation. It's like they materialized for this one purpose." "And the cameras?" Terrell asked. "Conveniently down," Harold said. Maintenance logs were backdated. Not falsified enough to trigger alarms, but altered enough to avoid questions. Terrell leaned forward now. "You're saying this wasn't sloppiness?" Harold shook his head. "No. This was restraint. Whoever moved this knew how far to go without crossing lines that would force review." "That was worse." Terrell rubbed his face, slow and deliberate. "I keep thinking," he said, "if I can just understand why they needed it to move that fast, the rest will come." Harold studied him for a moment before answering. "I'm already there," he said. "I've been there since the tox report." Terrell looked up sharply. "They sentenced him anyway," Terrell said quietly. "They sentenced him anyway," Harold confirmed. That was the moment it shifted. Harold leaned forward now, voice lower. "I'm not billing you for this," he said. "Not this part. I want to know who thought they could do this and walk away clean." Terrell didn't argue. He never did when Harold made up his mind. "How far?" Terrell asked. Harold didn't hesitate. "As far back as it takes," he said. "I'll pull it apart piece by piece. Who touched the file? Who rerouted paperwork? Who benefited from the speed?" Terrell nodded once. "That's all I need," he said. "And Terrell?" Harold added. "Yeah?" "This didn't start with the arrest," Harold said. "This started before the accident. Somebody set the table." Terrell felt that settle in his chest like a weight. "Then let's figure out who invited him to this bullshit-ass dinner." And then the phone rang at 3:15 a.m. Sandra's voice was tight, controlled. The kind of calm that comes after fear burns through once already and leaves you hollow. She told him about the call, about the warning, about being told not to trust everyone in her own friend group. Terrell didn't interrupt. When she finished, he sat on the edge of his bed, phone still pressed to his ear long after the line went quiet. The fragments he'd been holding finally shifted into place. Someone had been moving people, positioning narratives, counting on proximity to blur suspicion, and they had counted on him noticing too late. Update 2. Terrell stopped counting in weeks. He counted in filings that went unanswered, in motions acknowledged but never ruled on, in visits where Walter's shoulders sat a little differently than before. Jail doesn't just take time, it rearranges a man. Terrell noticed it first in the silences. Walter still spoke clearly, still tracked details, still asked the right questions, but the pauses came longer now, like he was learning which thoughts were worth finishing out loud. That scared Terrell more than anger would have, because anger means you still believe something can change. "Terrell's P, I didn't bring him dramatic revelations, no dramatic photos, no incriminating recordings. What he brought was worse. Patterns. Projects that cleared environmental review in half the usual time. Permits signed off without the expected resistance. Names missing from paperwork where they should have been automatic. It wasn't corruption in the loud way. It was efficiency without explanation. You notice how nobody's fighting this one? Terrell asked during one late call. That's what made me notice it, the PI replied. Everybody who usually slows things down stepped back. Terrell wrote that down. People don't step back unless they've been told to, or unless they already know the outcome. The hospital records came in quietly, folded into a batch of routine disclosures. Terrell almost missed it, but he didn't miss anything anymore. The toxicology report sat clean on the page. Blood alcohol level, 0.00. He read it 3 times and then a 4th. This wasn't ambiguous. This wasn't within margin. This wasn't something a decent prosecutor could argue around without lying outright. Walter hadn't been impaired, which meant the foundation of the case was false from the start. Terrell leaned back in his chair and let the realization land. They hadn't made a mistake, and they built a story. He forwarded the document to his PI with a single line. Trace who benefited from the timing. He filed paperwork that evening, and he never heard back. Harold didn't call first, and he never did when what he had mattered. He showed up at Terrell's office just after 7, jacket still on, folder tucked under his arm like it weighed more than paper should. The building was quiet in that early morning way that made every footstep sound louder than it needed to be. Terrell didn't look up from his desk right away. He knew that posture, knew that silence. "You're early," Terrell said finally. "I didn't want this sitting in my car," Harold replied. That was enough. Terrell closed the file he'd been reviewing and gestured toward the chair across from him. Harold didn't sit. He stepped forward and placed the folder on the desk between them. Didn't slide it. Didn't dramatize it. Just set it down. Careful. "This came up buried," Harold said. "Not where it should have been, not flagged, not referenced again." Terrell opened the folder. At first glance it read, harmless, concerned even, language softened by phrases like support and intervention, a declaration framed as care. Then he saw the heading, Statement of Concern Regarding Substance Use. Terrell's eyes moved slower now. The document didn't accuse Walter of committing a crime. It didn't allege recklessness. It said Walter had a drinking problem, that he had struggled before, that people close to him were worried, that intervention and treatment were recommended in the interest of public safety. Terrell felt his jaw tighten, and then he saw the signature. Brian. Neat, clear, undeniable. Terrell leaned back in his chair slowly, staring at the ceiling for a moment before looking back down at the page. "He didn't say Walter was drunk that night," Terrell said. "No," Harold replied. "He said Walter drinks." "That's all they needed," Terrell said quietly. Harold nodded. "It reframes everything. Past behavior becomes motive. Concern becomes confirmation." Terrell closed the folder. "This document makes impairment feel inevitable," he said, "even without proof." "Yes," Harold said. "It gives the state permission to stop asking questions." Terrell exhaled, long and controlled. Brian hadn't signed a lie about the night. He'd signed a story about the man. "That's worse," Terrell said. Harold didn't argue. "He didn't know what this would do," Terrell added after a beat. "I don't think he did," Harold said, "but he knew it would help." That landed. Terrell nodded once, eyes distant now. "So now he's in it," he said. "Yes," Harold replied, "whether he meant to be or not." Terrell rested his hands flat on the desk. "Okay," he said. "Then now I need to understand who asked him for this." He didn't say Brian's name again. By then, Walter had been inside long enough to know which guards liked to remind him where he was. Nothing overt. Moved bunks, delayed calls, misplaced paperwork. Terrell logged it all. "Doesn't feel random," Walter said once, voice low through the phone. "It isn't," Terrell replied. "It's friction. Somebody wants you tired." Walter laughed once, no humor in it. "That's new," he said. "Didn't used to work." That worried Terrell more than it should have. The call from Sandra came late. Too late for coincidence. She didn't raise her voice, didn't cry. She told him about the note and keep going. Terrell closed his office door after they hung up and stood there longer than necessary. Someone wanted the pressure maintained. That told Terrell two things. Someone on the inside didn't like how far this had gone. Someone else thought fear would slow them down. Both were wrong. This time, when Harold came into Terrell's office, he stayed standing near the window. Different energy, different weight. I kept pulling threads, Harold said. One of them didn't like being touched. Terrell didn't turn from the glass. He already knew this wasn't good news. Which one? He asked. The gas station, Harold said. Terrell's jaw tightened. Taylor, Harold continued, 9 minutes logged. A text. Carrier confirmed. Timestamp clean. Terrell turned slowly. There was a text, he said. Yes, Harold replied, from Taylor to Dante. And it wasn't entered into evidence, Terrell said, not asking. No, Harold said. It was never even referenced. Silence filled the room, thick and heavy. Terrell walked back to his desk and sat down, hands flat against the surface. His mind moved fast now, assembling timelines, replaying testimony, rereading transcripts he'd already memorized. Emma get it entered, Terrell asked. It won't be clean, Harold said. Terrell laughed once, humorless. Nothing about this has been clean, he said. Harold watched him carefully. This is bigger than one omission. I know, Terrell replied. This is curation. That word hung between them. Curation meant intent. It meant someone decided what the court was allowed to see and what it wasn't. Terrell leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes for a moment. Taylor, he said quietly. Brian. Dante. 3 names. 1 breath. Okay, he said. We stopped asking what went wrong. He looked at Harold steady and unflinching. We started asking who needed this to go right. Brian was first, not sloppy or public, just enough to hurt, enough to warn. Terrell didn't rush to conclusions. He waited. When Dante got hit days later, the message clarified. Same energy, different hand. His PI confirmed what Terrell already suspected. These weren't random, the PI said. They were selective. Terrell nodded. Selective violence means organization. Organization means intention. And intention means somebody believed they were already losing control. Terrell didn't confront anyone. That wasn't his role. He watched instead. By the 1.5-year mark, Terrell had taken other cases again. Big ones, quiet ones, pro bono work that most firms his size wouldn't touch. He didn't advertise it. But his firm's free work kept growing. Wrongful termination, small civil claims that changed real lives. Because Terrell never forgot what it felt like to be outpaced by a system moving faster than truth. When the moment broke, Terrell would already be standing. He didn't know when the expose would drop, but he felt it coming, and when it did, he wouldn't hesitate. That's where we'll leave it for now, because in part 2, the names stop being protected, and the question shifts from what went wrong to who made sure it didn't go right. We'll pick it up there. You've been listening to Pen and Perspective, and if it sat in your spirit, let it linger. If it stirred something in you, don't ignore it. I'm Miana DK. And before I put my pen down, tell me, whose perspective should I sit with next?